Magandang umaga, everyone. Assalamualaikum. It's a pleasure to be here. I thought walang pasok was going to affect us, but no. So very happy to be here. I was asked to talk about technology and jobs and how technological changes are affecting labor markets. And so what I thought is that I could start with a discussion of what is happening in the labor markets in the Philippines, but also in East Asia, and then get a little bit into what is it that technologies are doing to the way in which labor market operates, what is changing, what is not, and what is it that we can expect and do to influence that impact of technology on labor market outcomes. So I will start with a little bit of a discussion on what is actually happening out there in labor markets. I think I'm trying to, oh, there you go. And so what I wanted to do first is I wanted to discuss 5 stylized facts on employment outcomes in East Asia Pacific and how that compares to what we're seeing in the Philippines, right? So one of the things that we're seeing when we look at labor markets in East Asia is that the working age population is shrinking. In the Philippines, we're not seeing that. What we are seeing is an increase in the working age population. And in fact, what we are seeing is every year 1.2 million people joining the working age population for which we need to find jobs. Why is this relevant in this conversation? It is relevant in this conversation because the adoption of robots, automation, is something that is very much driven in many countries, particularly in advanced countries, by a labor force that is shrinking. This is not what we are seeing in the Philippines. In the Philippines, what we see is a labor force that is still growing. Okay? So I couldn't go so fast, but perhaps AI one day can do that faster, right? Before. There you go. So let's stay there. The other thing that is important to look at is what is happening with the composition, the age composition of the labor force. Young workers struggling to find jobs in East Asia Pacific. In the Philippines instead, youth unemployment is relatively low comparatively. Youth unemployment is always higher than average unemployment, but comparatively, what we see is that youth unemployment is relatively low when we compare it with what is happening in the rest of the region. Where we do have challenges in the Philippines is in terms of getting women participating in the labor force, large differences between labor force participation for males and women, which gives some space for talent misallocation. Females tend to get better educational outcomes than males, so getting them to participate in labor markets is very important for productivity. When it comes to education, so the composition of educational workers, improvements in the last decade, but still only a small share of workers that are obtaining skills that are needed in modern economies, and we get back to the STEM qualifications later, but that is something that is worth looking at. And sectoral transformation in employment, a movement of workers out of agriculture into slightly more productive sectors, particularly in trade, accommodation, construction. Platforms are now the new employers, and so they are absorbing people that come out of agriculture, employing them, the Lazadas, the Grabs, right? What is called the gig workers. Next thing that I wanted to discuss is a little bit of what is happening on the earnings side, so on employment levels, but also what is happening on the wages side. So one of the things that we see is wage growth that is robust, both in East Asia Pacific and in the Philippines. East Asia Pacific in general, wages growing faster than productivity. In the Philippines, wages growing a little slower than productivity, but still robust wage growth. Wages growing faster for younger workers that are the ones that tend to be getting those jobs in digitally related jobs. Gender wage gaps still there, so females with similar levels of qualifications earning less than males. gap in the Philippines is estimated at 15%. And a skill wage gap that is shrinking, but it's still quite large. So the gap in wages between tertiary educated and primary educated in the Philippines is 69%. So there are incentives for people, the youth, to get higher education, because there's a wage gap that is still quite substantial, even if slightly shrinking. Wage growth being concentrated in ICT and technical professions. So that's something that happens in East Asia, also happens in the Philippines. So let me go a little bit more in details into what is happening in the Philippines in the labor market and how that is actually connected to this story that we're going to be discussing today about innovation and technology and jobs. So the first thing that I want to mention is a chart that when we were looking at what happened over the last 15 years in the Philippines, fast growth. This is something that we saw much faster than what we were seeing in the 1990s and in the first decade of the 2000s. And that fast growth came with a lot of job creation. 11.7 million new jobs were created between 2010 and 2024. 75% of those new jobs were created in non-tradable sectors. Non-tradable sectors are those sectors that are not exposed to international competition. They are not exporters, or they are not exposed to competition from imports. So they're a little bit jobs that are protected by some sort of barrier to trade that is creating some monopoly power. Many of these jobs actually in services are what I mentioned before, is platform jobs. So people getting out of agriculture and getting new jobs in domestic retail, right? Domestic retail, the Lazadas, the Grabs, the delivery people, etc. A lot in construction that also got a boost in economic activity the last 15 years. So the platforms, digital platforms being the new big employer in the economy. So that is something to pay attention to. The second fact that I wanted to share with you is it's larger, more productive firms that are the ones paying better salaries, right? The chart basically shows rank order firms in manufacturing and in services, from the least productive, the bottom, to the most productive at the top. And then what you see the chart is showing is the average wages and median wages paid by these different types of firms. The least productive, the most productive. The least productive are the ones that are paying lower wages. The most productive are the ones that are paying higher wages. Services, the same thing. What that is telling us is we need firms to grow, to innovate, to move from small to large. They get more productive. As they get more productive, they create better opportunities, more better paying jobs for people. Now, what we also see is that if you look at, again, rank order firms from the least productive to the most productive in manufacturing and in services, and if you look at how many workers they employ, you see the least productive employ about 7% of workers, the most productive employ about 50% of workers. That's good news. You want more workers working in innovative, more productive firms. That means better allocation resources. What we see in the Philippines is that over the last 10 years, these guys here at the top, these most productive firms, are actually shedding rather than scaling up, shedding workers, shedding employment from 50% to 46%, same in services from 34% to 31%, rather than scaling up. I'm bringing this up here in this audience because innovation is going to be crucial for these guys to scale up and grow rather than shrink. Because those are the ones that pay better wages. Innovation is going to be crucial for them to become more dynamic, grow, create more employment. The other thing that I wanted to mention before I get directly into the technology and jobs thing is where is the growth coming from in the Philippines and the job creation coming from? And An interesting finding here is that actually it's low and middle income regions in the Philippines that are showing more dynamism. To be absolutely clear, there are large disparities in economic activity in the Philippines. A worker in the barn is 1/6 as productive as a worker in Metro Manila. 1/6, right? The average wage in the barn is 1/6 of the average wage in Metro Manila. But these disparities have been narrowing, and the productivity of workers in low-income regions has been growing faster than in middle-income regions than in national capital region. So disparities have been declining, and they have been declining on the back of more opportunities for people in these regions. What this chart shows is the shares of wage employment, so employment in firms, in low-income regions, think the barn, think the Visayas, in middle-income regions, and in Metro Manila, it's normalized to 1. So more employment in firms is being created in lagging regions in the Philippines, and that gives more opportunities and increases wages in those regions. That happens because you also have much faster firm creation in lagging regions than in middle-income regions than in the Metro Manila region. So there is something happening across space in the Philippines that is changing. And this is interesting. I think this is interesting, but particularly interesting because this marks a change with respect to what was happening in the 90s and 2000s, in which growth was concentrated around Metro Manila and surroundings. So change in the dynamics of growth. And this is also telling us, when we're thinking about innovation policy, let's not forget lagging regions where you have lots of opportunities to scale up, lots of opportunities to catch up, and you have more firms being created. So let's think about those regions too. Now, what I want to go next is to talk a little bit more about what I was supposed to talk about. That is, what is technology doing into labor markets, right? And how is technology linking to that story that I was telling you before. And to start that, I wanted to present a little bit of a framework here, right? So technologies are going to affect labor markets in at least 2 ways. They're going to change the task content of jobs, and they're going to change the productivity of jobs. The first thing is that they're going to change the tasks that are associated with jobs. And because they change the tasks that are associated with jobs, there's a lot of resistance to some technological change. We can go back to Industrial Revolution, right? The Luddites, I don't know how much you've heard of the Luddites, but the Luddites was this movement of people that in the 1900s they were destroying the power loomers that were being used in the new textile factories that were emerging because they were losing jobs. So the change in the task content of jobs, what it does is it leads to labor displacement. There are some tasks that are not relevant anymore. Think about that accountant in the 1970s or the 1980s when Lotus 123, the precursor of Excel, started being available, and then the bookkeeping part of the job of an accountant was not necessary anymore. So if that accountant was only good at bookkeeping, then his or her comparative advantage was sort of gone, and that job was destroyed. The thing is that what new technologies also do is they change productivity. And so if you were an accountant that, yeah, you were doing the bookkeeping part, but you were also good at strategizing about financial planning, then all of a sudden Lotus 123 or Excel now allows you to spend much less time doing the bookkeeping and focusing on the strategic part of your job. And so all of a sudden, you become much more valuable. So there's a productivity story there. there's also a productivity story because automation allows us to produce much more with fewer resources. So part of the displacement of labor means lower costs, and so that brings more productivity. And so because that brings more productivity, then you have higher incomes in aggregate that lead to more demand. And because there's more demand for everything. Perhaps not so much more demand for accountants, but more demand for entertainment, restaurants, design of Lotus 123 or Excel. And that creates also more jobs. And so you're going to have these two effects that work sort of in opposite directions. So there's an effect that is some of the tasks get eliminated, but some of the tasks increase in value and some others are created. So what is going to happen with the number of jobs given technology is not so much the relevant question. The relevant question is what happens to the composition of jobs. Which are the jobs that are going to be destroyed? Which are the jobs that are going to be created? And what type of skills do we need for one and the other? I want to bring now the technology that everybody's talking about, that is the AI, right? And everybody's talking about AI and what is AI going to be doing to jobs. AI in a way is different than previous technologies for a number of reasons, but one of the reasons is the type of jobs it affects or it exposes all of a sudden. You can think about jobs or tasks having two main characteristics, whether they entail physical activity or cognitive activity, or whether they entail routine or non-routine type of tasks. And so we can classify different types of tasks associated with jobs according to whether they are mostly cognitive or physical, or whether they are non-routine or routine. So you can think about an assembly line worker, right? An assembly line worker is doing something routine that includes moving, right? It's physical. And you can think about, I don't know how many of you have watched Modern Times by Charles Chaplin and the machine coming and replacing that repetitive task that the worker was doing, right? So in a way, that type of technology came for these guys there. You can also think of those that are doing routine work that is cognitive, and the typical example is bank teller, right? So the bank teller is routine cognitive. You can think about the non-routine cognitive. Let's think about a financial analyst that is planning, processing information. There's a lot of tacit knowledge there. Or you can think about the non-routine physical, a taxi driver, right? A taxi driver needs to know where to go when there's more traffic, less traffic, more rain, less rain. It's physical. So technology comes for them in different ways or in different waves. Robots, or the first industrial revolution, now robots, comes for the assembly line worker, right? Robots are very good at automating very repetitive tasks. Computers, ATMs came for bank tellers, right? So you have fewer than you had in the past. You can even think about basic translators. Google Translate automated that, not completely, but to a large extent. Now, the way AI is different is AI is much better than this first process of automation, robots, computers, ATMs, at dealing with the tacit knowledge part of the job, right? That thing of decision making that humans had an advantage on, because they could make decisions, they could infer from information available, that these technologies were they struggle with. So what AI does is actually it infers a lot from a bunch of information you feed, and so it can make certain decisions on the basis of knowledge that is not fully standardized out there, that is tacit. And so it is coming for those guys there, right? And if you combine AI with robotics, then you also have these self-driving cars that are going to be, I don't know how many of you have seen this in San Francisco, but They are becoming very popular, these self-driving taxis. Now, there are other types of jobs that actually are going to be exposed to AI too, but are going to be, to a large extent, benefiting, because the job has many tasks that are associated with it. So it's not a single task for a job. And so AI comes to facilitate some of the tasks and then gives more space for the person to focus on the tasks for which you still need human emotions, right? You still need socio-emotional skills, right? And the teacher is a great example. The other great example is the medical doctors. You have technologies that are facilitating the way in which doctors diagnose. They can focus on the socio-emotional skills they have to engage with the patient and extract better information, communicate better, induce change in the behavior of the patient. Similar with teachers. So basically, technology is affecting these jobs in different ways. Since the Luddites, we've been thinking we're going to run out of jobs because technology is coming for them. What we are systematically seeing is that what tends to happen is not that jobs run out, is that the composition of jobs change. And so we need to pay attention to what are the jobs in demand and what are the jobs that are not going to be in demand, what are the skills needed for one and what are the skills needed for another, right? So what we did at the World Bank, and this is something that others are doing too, at the same time as we were doing this, IMF was doing this, is, okay, so let's look at this classification of tasks and jobs into routine and routine, physical and cognitive, and let's look at how many people we have in the Philippines working in these tasks. The chart here shows the tasks, the mapping of tasks in the Philippines. The size of the bubbles represent how important these are in terms of employment shares in the Philippines. Last data available for this is 2022. And so what we're doing here is we're mapping what are the jobs that are not exposed, what are the ones that are exposed. The ones not exposed, or let's say of low exposure, are the ones with the yellow bubbles. The ones that are exposed are those in red or blue bubbles. The blue ones are exposed with high complementarity. Think about the teachers, think about the medical doctors. So those guys are exposed, they're benefiting, they're likely to become more valuable because of AI. Those that are in red, the high exposure, low complementarity, are more at risk of being displaced. A couple of warnings with this chart is that this is based on a classification that maps different tasks to the amount of to the likelihood of exposure and the likelihood of complementarity and displacement. The thing is that AI moves very fast, but people are a little slow in building these classifications. And so this classification is about 1.5 years old. And it's likely that there are many tasks that were of low exposure 1.5 years ago that are not of low exposure anymore. So this gives us a little bit of a first pass, but by no means is something that you can say, okay, this is the truth. The next slide basically systematizes these bubbles into something that is easier to read. And basically what it tells us is all the labor force in the Philippines, we have that about a little bit less than 2/3 show low exposure. Think about people working in agriculture, people working in construction, people working in a lot of physical activities, manual, that are going to be less exposed. And then think about the other third. Half of those show high complementarity, half of those show relatively low complementarity. Interestingly, the age, we do this by age, and it's not surprising that it's the youth are mostly exposed, are more exposed than the elders, and that makes sense. But females are also much more exposed than males. That also linked to the fact that they probably work less in manual activities than males. But I thought this was something interesting to look at. And it certainly has implications when we think about, I mean, a key sector that is exposed in the Philippines is the sector IT BPO. So IT BPO has been a star sector in the economy, creating employment, being one of the tradable sectors, right? One of the sectors exposed to international competition. And so the challenge is, how can we ensure that AI comes to enhance the value proposition of the Philippines as an attractor of investment in IT BPO, as the solution hub for back office type of services for firms. So what type of skills are needed? What type of new jobs do we need and new sectors do we need? So DTI there plays an important role. Also in thinking investment promotion, what type of new services we want to bring in that are going to gain rather than lose with AI. Let me move now to another technology that is robots. Robots are not so much used in the Philippines, in part because the share of manufacturing in the economic structure of the Philippines is relatively low, and robots are mostly deployed in manufacturing activities, not only, and I think our panelist is going to give some interesting examples in the health sector, but mostly they are deployed in manufacturing. But robots have been used extensively over the last years, and what this chart shows is industrial robot adoption in countries in East Asia, the Pacific, and an average for high-income economies. So if you think about advanced economies, sharp increases, almost, you can say exponential, that's that dashed line, and then China in the region leading the way, but also Malaysia, Thailand are big adopters of robots, particularly in their manufacturing sector. The Philippines in green is a slow adopter of robots. We can also look at what is happening in terms of which sectors are the ones adopting robots. And so we see that they are quite prevalent in computer electronics and auto in the Philippines in the rubber and plastics sector. But again, if you think about both Indonesia and the Philippines, very small shares. Think about this in conjunction with two things. One is the fact that you have a much smaller share of manufacturing in your economy, but also think about that in terms of the composition of labor and capital that you have in an economy. This is an economy that is labor abundant, right? And because it's labor abundant, labor is relatively cheaper, so adoption of robots tends to be not the priority. So the system of incentives is not working towards robot adoption. You can also think about the star manufacturing sector in the Philippines is semiconductors, right? But the segment of semiconductors in which the Philippines is inserted is a segment in which most of the work is manual. So it hasn't been automated to date, right? So the packing and testing of semiconductors. So let me get into the robot penetration and employment. So again, as I mentioned before, I think since the Luddites, we've been thinking automation technology is coming for jobs, but actually what we end up seeing is that that's not the case. Automation brings so much productivity gains that you end up creating jobs elsewhere. What this chart shows is the changes in robot adoption by sector and the changes in employment by sectors for East Asia Pacific. And what you see is a correlation that is not just in this chart, it's out there in the literature that shows that robot adoption is positively correlated with employment growth. So the effect of productivity tends to predominate over the effect of displacement. And so sectors in which you have more adoption of robots are also sectors in which employment tends to grow faster because the increases in productivity allow reduction in prices that boost demand, and so the sectors end up growing and therefore tend to employ more people. So what we see with robots when we think about the composition of employment is that robots, basically what they're doing is they're creating jobs for high-skilled workers, but they're displacing jobs for low-skilled workers. These low-skilled workers end up in informal sectors. So if you're thinking about reskilling and upskilling, there's a portion of these workers in low-skill activities that end up, their main task get automated, that are going to be out of the job. What to do with these workers? A portion of them are likely to be able to be reskilled. A portion of them most likely are not going to be reskilled, and it's not feasible to reskill. And so we need to think carefully about social protection. So social protection in a context in which fast-changing technological change is happening becomes very important. Not all workers are going to be able to be reskilled and upskilled and therefore find a new job. There are some that unfortunately will fall under informal work, lower benefits, lower salaries, and so there's a risk of poverty for those. What we don't see yet is a lot of evidence showing us what is happening with AI and earnings or AI and employment levels. So there is a little bit on increased AI exposure and lower wages, but there's no association yet with employment growth. This is a new area of work because this is new. If you talk to, so I've been talking to IT BPO players in the country. About a year ago, they were extremely bullish about AI as something that was going to increase their productivity and is going to bring more business. Now they're a little bit more concerned, but I think neither then nor now, they actually have hard data to say, actually, we are shrinking, we are reducing our workforce. I think we are still in a moment of waiting to see what is going to happen with AI and employment. Likely a compositional change in employment, likely not a change in aggregate employment levels. As I mentioned before, exposure tends to be more prevalent in the higher educated and females than in lower educated males. That related to the manual jobs being less exposed. And next. So a little bit of some differences that we see in labor market outcomes for robots and AI. So in aggregate, in terms of aggregate outcomes, right? When we look at the evidence of robot adoption and labor market outcomes, what we see is that robot adoption leads to more jobs being created with better wages. AI, slight decreases in wages, no association with employment growth, as I mentioned before. When you think about heterogeneities by group, what we see is younger workers benefiting from robots, but younger workers being more exposed to AI, men and women benefiting by robots, women being more exposed to AI. Higher educated are going to benefit with robots because they are the ones that actually have the tacit knowledge to make the decisions. But when it comes to AI, because AI is good at the tacit knowledge, then higher educated are actually those that are more exposed. And when you think about structural transformation, routine and physical jobs displaced, but AI comes for the more cognitive jobs and also to some extent for the non-routine. So some important differences between what robots do, what AI is doing or is expected to be doing in labor markets. So I'm going to come to the conclusion because I was being pushed with a 5-minute, 2-minute poster. But the obvious thing, everybody says this, strengths and skills. It's sort of an armchair comment to make, right? You need to strengthen skills. The question is, what type of skills are the ones that are going to be more valuable? And at the moment, social and economical and emotional skills are the most human skills that are not yet there for AI to substitute. Yeah, but there are the advanced technical skills, particularly in STEMs. They are particularly important when you have more AI being used at the job. And this is something also the IT BPO sector says, that when they adopt more AI, they also need to have constantly engineers there, much more than before when they were not adopting AI, to ensure that if there were challenges with the algorithm, you had engineers to solve them. So there are certain skills that are going to be more in demand, particularly socio-emotional, but also STEMs. Other point that I want to emphasize here is factor price distortions. I don't know how many, I don't know if this is probably not an economist-only audience, so I will try to translate that into normal people. But the point I want to make here is that, again, you have fewer robots here because this is a more labor-abundant economy. So it's cheaper to hire workers. If you have a taxation system that makes or a system of labor regulations that makes hiring workers very complicated, then technology will come for those jobs faster than if you have labor regulations and a taxation system that is making it easier for firms to hire workers. Firms don't care about workers, right? Not that in principle, firms care about their bottom line, right? And if their bottom line comes with technology, they're going to go for technology. If their bottom line comes with more workers, they're going to come with more workers. Policies are crucial here. In advanced economies where these technologies are being developed, they are crucial to shape how AI is evolving. And AI can evolve to develop better or deliver better educational outcomes or better health outcomes, or it can progress. So if you think about China, AI is being used heavily for people surveillance, and is extremely efficient at censorship and people surveillance. But AI can be shaped. So if we put more investment in getting AI to work for education, for innovation, for health, AI can deliver there. That requires investments, and that's where governments can play a role, but particularly advanced economies. But when it comes to incentives, think about taxation systems, how difficult we make it for firms to hire workers. Labor regulations, these things are things that are going to help preserve labor as a valuable thing, something that we believe is important beyond the bottom line of the firm. So removing factor price distortion, things that make artificially more expensive to hire workers is going to be quite important in this context. And I'm going to say one more thing before I wrap up, that is expand social protection and think about the new informal. So I know here we're thinking about innovation, but even thinking about innovation, I think an important element to consider here is there are going to be some tasks displaced that are going to lead to some workers that are going to be displaced that we may not be able to reskill them and upskill them. So social protection is going to be also crucial in this context. So skills, incentives, and social protection, quite important to think about jobs in a world of fast technological change. So with this, I will stop. Thank you very much for the attention.
So welcome to the first panel discussion. So this discussion will be under the theme Digitalization in Industry, the role of technology in transforming sectors. So with this one, we will discuss about digitalization and employment. I believe that our speaker has mentioned a little bit, has give us a little bit of background of what is digitalization is doing with the employment. So we will dig deeper into this topic. And as we all know that the digitalization is here, it's now, it's not in the future. So how are we going to deal with the situation? How are we going to dig deeper into this? So we will explore together of how industry are being transformed, the opportunities that it brings, and how can we address these challenges that is inevitably that come with this rapid change. So first of all, I'd like to invite our speaker, Dr. Gonzalo Varela from the World Bank, to be part of the panelists. So Dr. Varela is the lead economist and the Prosperity Practice Group from Brunei Darussalam, Malaysia, and the Philippines, based in Manila. He's a macroeconomist by training with a PhD in economics from the University of Sussex, and more than 20 years of experience in policy advisory, policy making, operations, and research. He was worked in a vast number of countries on issues related to economic performance, trade and investment policy, and macro trade linkage, and impact evaluations of public policies. Before working for the World Bank, he worked for academia, for the public and private sector. So please join me in welcoming Dr. Gonzalo Varela. And joining him, we have Mr. Yassen Sarip Ala, a consultant and Malaysia Technical Cooperation Program alumnus, MTCP alumnus, works at the intersection of Islamic finance, digital inclusion, and public sector capability. He advised the World Bank support teachers' effectiveness and competencies enhancement project with the Department of Education in BARM, focusing on future reading skills, and previously contributed to policy development in the Bangsamoro Transition Authority and Islamic Finance Technical Working Group. Pursuing a PhD in Islamic finance, Mr. Yassen holds an MBA from Istanbul University and bachelor degree in business administration, cum laude, from University of the Philippines. His work promotes peace, sustainability, and inclusion through TVET industry linkage in halal and digital value chains, as well as practice model and e-wallet rails, micro sukuk, and Sharia complaint housing. And he aims to enhance Malaysia-Philippines collaboration and workforce development through digitalization and TVET. So please join me in welcoming Mr. Yassen. The next panelist, we also would like to welcome Mr. Adhwa Azmil, the Assistant Trade Attaché at the Trade Section of the Embassy of Malaysia, where he supports Malaysian companies in their export ventures into the Philippines. Previously, he managed trade matters in Vietnam, Cambodia, and Laos PDR under the ASEAN Oceania section at MATRADE, collaboration with MATRADE Ho Chi Minh City to facilitate Malaysian exports. He also served as assistant manager in the digital trade section, promotion Malaysian participation in international e-commerce through the e-trade program. And Mr. Adhwa holds a bachelor degree in economics from the University at Buffalo, New York. So please join me in welcome Mr. Adhwa. And finally, we have Dr. Francisco Emmanuel T. Munsayac Jr. III. Dr. Francisco is a biomedical engineering professional and assistant professor at De La Salle University, where he is also served as an executive officer of the Evelyn D. Ang Institute of Biomedical Engineering and Health Technology. He holds a PhD in manufacturing engineer with the award-winning dissertation and he has led DOST PCHRD Fund project on robotic articulation laparoscopic instrument, and the CELA project. His expertise include automation, artificial intelligence, and biomedical engineering with proficiency in CAD software, Python, and MATLAB. So please allow us to welcome our fourth panelist of today, Dr. Francisco. So thank you very much for your attention on the introduction of our panelists today. So together, these panelists will help us understand not only just the current landscape, but also the future pathway of digitalization in industry and employment. So to begin our conversation today, I will pose the series of questions to our panelists. Each of you will share your insights, and after which I will give a short round followed by the open forum where we can welcome the question from all of you here. So I believe that we have a very limited time. So without further ado, I'd like to start our first question. So the first question, let us start with transformation. So in your view, what are the most significant ways digitalization is reshaping traditional industry today? So I'd like to start with Dr. Gonzalo. You may be able to elaborate more on what you give us the foundation presentation earlier, please.
Okay, so I talk too much, so I'm going to be very brief here. And I would say that for me, as an economist, the way digitalization has transformed industry is by exposing to competition some activities that before were not exposed to competition. And I'll give one example. The IT BPO that was outsourced out of advanced economies is something that technology made it possible, right? So technology reduced information, IT costs, so cost of transmitting information, of communicating, and so now BASF in Germany can have all its back office in Uruguay, or Citibank can have its back office here in the Philippines. That is enabled by digitalization. And so what that means is that there's much more competition now in sectors in which before they were not exposed to competition. Before, if you wanted to do the accounting for BASF, you needed to be there in BASF. You couldn't be in another country. The fact that digital technologies made possible to outsource so many tasks brought a lot of opportunities for emerging economies and brought more competition, and so improved performance and reduced prices. I think this is one key element that digitalization did with industry, brought competition.
So broad competition will allow us to have more opportunity and will improve the services of the sector. So thank you very much for your quick response on this question. So allow me to move to Mr. Yassen, please.
Yeah, so building up on opening opportunities, just try to elaborate sectors that are very much affected. So for example, in education, we can now take classes anytime, anywhere. It could be asynchronous. You don't need to be in the same place at the same time. You could have classmates all over the world and tackling the same problem or same lesson. That's one. That's one sector is greatly affected. Then we can look into, from education, digital economy, the type of job that we are looking into, and the way how we get those types of jobs are very much also affected. You don't need to physically go into a company to apply. A lot of things are already available online, even submission of a resume and selections. The type of jobs in the digital economy is expanding, the gig economy, they call it nowadays. And then the daily transactions that we have. Fintech has greatly affected the way we interact with money. Before, we have to go to the bank and ATM, and then when you go e-wallet, you can transfer funds from one account to the other. But now you can even have insurances, investments, loans online. So our aspects of life, from education to the type of jobs that we're gonna get, and our daily interactions is very much affected by digitalization. It comes with opportunities, but it also opens us to a lot of risks. Thanks.
Thank Thank you very much. So it's the digitalization make things easier, make it faster. But of course, with the opportunity, it comes with some challenges as well. And you mentioned education about the job and also the fintech. Thank you very much. So I'd like to move to Mr. Adhwa, please, for your idea.
Thank you. So the way I look at it, in terms of trade, digitalization is actually very substantial and very helpful to particularly MSMEs to open up their market size. So for MSMEs, previously where their market is currently limited almost always to their country of origin, now they can easily access international markets through internet, through online platforms, which is easily accessible. Some are free, some are comes at a very small fee that they can easily substitute with what they get from selling overseas. So this create more job opportunities for MSMEs, and in turn can help to further grow the economy of the country, and also to based on the slides by Dr. Varela earlier, even for the informal workers, the jobs that are available to them while it is informal can also come internationally. So, for example, we have websites like Fiverr, where you can do gig jobs from everywhere around the world. So a Filipino can earn just by doing small jobs, but can earn in USD and in turn actually making much more than working in an office. So yeah, while digitalization has its things that we have to concern about, but it also provides a lot of opportunities, a lot of avenues for a country, particularly for the MSMEs and for the youth sectors to grow further and gain more wealth in the future.
Thank you very much. So it's really the opportunity of the digitalization in terms of like improving the access, the easy access to all the workforce, and also the opportunity to earn from all the manpower. So thank you very much, Mr. Aswar. And then I'd like to move to Dr. Francisco, please.
Okay. So thank you. In my view, the main driving force is more on the blurring between the traditional workforce or the traditional work with our digital technologies. So more and more, especially let's say in the medical sector, we apply more AI, or in the manufacturing sector, we have smart manufacturing, Industry 4.0. And the reason behind it is we're making more data-driven decisions. We're moving away from, let's say, what we call intuition-based decisions based on. But right now, through let's say AI, we get our digitalization. We get the data much more faster, much more quicker, and we can react to it faster, making the changes much faster. So it becomes a catalyst as well of change in our industry. So it's more on those.
Thank you very much. For me, I think our panelists here, since all of them are coming from the different sectors, so we are able to capture the nuance of how digitalization is really affect in terms of so many sector, in terms of education, anytime, anywhere learning, in terms of trade and marketing, of course, the competition that will be very useful for all those who be able to adapt and also be able to use this opportunity to improve themselves, to improve their service. And also in terms of medical, in terms of job, the digitalization is really affecting in any way. And it's not just about the work, actually. Because if we think a little bit back, if we stepping back from all of the sectors that we mentioned earlier, actually the person is the one, the human being is the one who actually working behind this. Dr. Gonzalo mentioned earlier about the labor market versus the AI already. So with this one, I believe that, well, digitalization is only as strong as the people who drive it. Because we cannot say that we will just only let the AI, we let the technology run along, but it's actually we really need the people, the human, to really go about it. So I like to move to my next question is, about the education, about the opportunity of learning of all the human sector. So what are the key elements? So what are the key sector that you think that it's important for us to improve our educators and our manpower to be able to equip to deal with this changing world? So please, I'd like to rotate the order. So can I start with Dr. Francisco, please?
So I guess if in terms of what sector, I guess as me, I'm coming from the academe. So I think more on the education sector. So why is that? We should take it from some sort of a layered approach or holistic approach when we're going through that change. We have to give the opportunity to upskill, reskill our workers, and of course through that, our educators will be one of the key driving force in order to help them to adopt to these new technologies. It will usher in the new generation of workers. So let's say gone are the traditional one, but of course they're not completely gone without any type of job. But of course preparing them already to what the future will bring. So yeah.
Thank you very much. So reskill, upskills, that is very important and relevant. I believe that in the role education, this is something that we've been discussing about the reskills, upskills of the manpower after the formal schooling. So I'm moving back to Mr. Adhwa, please.
I heartfully concur that to reskill and to upskill workers are very important to ensure that none are left behind. But more importantly, I would say that for businesses at least, it's not only the workers that need to be reskilled, but more importantly for the business owner, for them to be reskilled, to be upskilled, and to be able to adapt to the recent technologies, to always be open to embrace technologies. So if I may share, in Malaysia, under the Malaysia Digital Economy Corporation, they have a bunch of initiatives to promote this upskilling and reskilling of workers. So they have My Digital Maker, and then My Future Jobs and My Digital, targeting all different levels of worker, from the professionals to the students. And additionally also in Malaysia, through our Human Resource Department Corporation, they made a levy where all employers must contribute 1% of the employee's salary to a charity corp for the purpose of training of the employee. So this, but the training does not necessarily have to be from the government. It can be from the private sectors themselves. So the private sectors know better which training, which skills that are urgently needed in the industry. So these are some of the examples from Malaysia in terms of upskilling and reskilling workers. And I think it can also be emulated in the Philippines as well. Thank you.
Thank you very much. This is very interesting. So it's the continuous training that is something very important. So it's not just like, well, we can think about it and do it, but it has to be systematic and continuous. So this is something very important. So well, I'd like to move next to Mr. Yassen, please.
Yeah, definitely. I agree that education is a sector that really needs to be focused on. But another aspect would be inclusion. And then to be more concrete than financial inclusion, anyone has to have access to opportunities. And that's how fintech comes into the figure. Because if you want to go trade in business, to some extent you need capital. But a conventional way of getting it would be through banks and other mechanisms that's a little bit more difficult for those in the far-flung areas. And that's where financial inclusion comes in with fintech. And that's one aspect that we should be really looking into, especially in the Philippines. We have around like 10% Muslim population. They, to some extent, intentionally become financially excluded. Hence, we are looking into Islamic finance as a particular sector that we could look into in the expansion of digitalization.
Thank you very much. So you talk about inclusion, the inclusive. That is another topic that is very important also because, well, apart from continuous training, everyone should be able to have the opportunity to train as well. So my last panelist, so the words from Dr. Gonzalo, please.
Sure. I think my colleagues mentioned the importance of focusing on the on the stock of workers, right? Reskilling, upskilling, continuous education, fintech. I would suggest also, I would think that also we need to think about the pipeline of workers and focus on foundations, because I think foundations are as important, will continue. So they were important before and they will continue being important in the future. Reading, writing, this is crucial, and it's a challenge in many countries in East Asia and the Pacific, particularly in the Philippines. And so focusing on foundational skills is also going to be important to be better prepared.
Thank you very much. Well, the foundational skills, of course, this is very important. And actually, you touched the very important part. It's about, well, the skills right now that is important, but in the future, we probably have something else that is also important. And that's also something else that may not be relevant with the future as well. So these are the things that we need to really to take into consideration of how are we going to equip our manpower, equip our learners to adapt to this rapidly change. So this is the part of the education about the training, giving the opportunity. I'd like to open a little bit more of the topic on the why the digitalization is open many opportunities. As we've seen, because our panelist has mentioned that the digitalization has opened opportunity in terms of the access, in terms of the even the distance, because you don't have to travel, everything can do it through the online methods and those things. But it's also present the challenge. I think all of our panelists agree at the same time that even though there's opportunity, but there's also challenges, such as there's also the inequality of access, there's also the job displacement, and also another thing that we might not have mentioned it yet is about the ethics and cybersecurity, that those are the risks that it comes with the digitalization. So my next question I would like to seek your advice on how can industry and government strike the right balance between harnessing this opportunity and managing the risk. So I'd like to start with Dr. Gonzalo this time.
This is a very difficult question. Didn't want to go first. Okay.
Or would you like me to
No,
counter?
it's okay. I think it's, the striking the balance is quite important. I think there's going to be a lot of trial and error in this area, because this is something that is moving very fast and is relatively new. I want to mention one example, right? So the data localization policies. Do we want data localized as an effort to preserve national security? Well, that may come at a cost. So if countries decide that data needs to be localized to preserve national security, then there's an associated cost that has to do with having a lower, being less attractive to investment in sectors that require data to be flowing across countries. So again, the IT/BPO sector is my favorite sector to talk about. To attract more investment into the country may need more flexible data localization policies. So striking the balance is important. It requires a lot of dialogue. It requires a lot of pragmatism, but also a lot of understanding of what are ways of preserving national security, for example, and what are ways in which actually you're going beyond what would be a national security concern, and you're actually affecting or restricting trade and investment. So I think my key point here is pragmatism, a lot of public-private sector dialogue, and being ready to make mistakes and correct them.
Thank you very much. Actually, this question is very important. Thank you for giving us the comprehensive perspective, that the pragmatism and also the dialogue that would be helpful for to shaping the policy towards this, because this is going to be very difficult, right? The resource is very limited, but well, at the end of the day, of course, everyone wants the best out of this. So it's quite a challenge. So thank you very much, Dr. Gonzalo. I'd like to move to Mr. Yassen, please.
Yeah, for me, for able to have a balance, two things is necessary: access and protection. for digitalization truly opens up opportunity, but not everyone has equal access to that opportunity. If you look at the Philippines, we have far-flung areas in Mindanao who are still having trouble with one, electricity, second, internet. So now, how do you then ensure that that happens? So when you say digitalization, then we have to ensure that access is there. And I think the government is doing a good thing on free Wi-Fi for all. That's an ongoing program. In the BARM, under the Office of the Chief Minister, there's a particular agency that works on the BARM-wide internet connectivity. So that's one thing that's being conducted. So as we go on into access, it's also very much important to look into protection. Data privacy is definitely an issue. Cybersecurity is definitely an issue. But another type of protection is the social protection. If people are gonna be out of job because of this one, then we should also use digitalization in fast tracking the provision of social protection. So if you can fast track hiring people, then maybe you can also fast track giving of relief in terms of emergency, in fast tracking giving assistance to those people in need. So that's it. For me, it's access and protection when we talk about digitalization.
So, well, these are the two things that has to go together: access and protection. But somehow, actually, this will be my next question. Actually, for all of you, that I probably ask you to choose which one has to do first, which one has to be the priority. So, thank you very much. Next, to Mr. Adhwa, please.
So I fully heartily agree. Access and protection is very, very crucial to strike a balance between government and public sector. But the thing with digitalization is that the private sector will always be at least 10 steps forward compared to the government. The government will come in later. They will want to regulate it, of course, for the betterment of the people, because things need to be kept in check. But they also need to be the way the government came in must be very private sector friendly, so as not to stifle the growth of the digitalization itself. So, because whenever, especially for a sector like digitalization, too much regulation, too strict of regulation can actually hamper the growth of the industry itself. So for the government to actually came in, it is best if they can come in with the intent to help the private sector to grow and to push forward for the industry, to work hand in hand with the private sector to grow the industry, instead of just regulating it for the sole purpose of keeping everything in check, which is needed, of course, but it is important for the government not to hamper the industry by keeping it on a very strict leash, I would say.
Thank you very much. So it's the market system that we probably have to allow this to happen to make sure that there's access and protection. So well, the role of the government is to support the role of the private sector and works hand in hand together. The collaboration is key. That is correct. That I agree with you. So thank you very much. And then I'd like to move to Dr. Francisco, please.
So for me, I think to strike that balance, as I mentioned before, we should approach it in a holistic way. Meaning, we should not just focus, let's say, on the technology, on the workforce, or the capability itself, but we should approach it all of those three together. So let's say for the workforce, or as mentioned before, we should enable our inclusive education that is ready to adopt the digitalization. Next is the technology. So for the technology-wise, of course, let's say some technology aren't that available yet in the Philippines. So I'll share with you an example of what we are doing in research. So we're building a robotic surgical device, but there has been no company that can manufacture it, even our prototype. So we have to send it to Singapore to be able to produce it and bring it back here. So it's a DOST-funded project, so it's with their support as well to bring it there. Then another research on stroke rehab. So we have a stroke rehab robot. We have to prepare it as a product, but in the Philippines again, there's no medical device manufacturer or designer to be able to be capable of it. So we have to bring it to Japan, then they do it there, then we bring it back here. So I think it's important we have this sort of policy of very clear mobilization between our, let's say, for within ASEAN, let's say. So right now we have the ASEAN medical device harmonization, which is very helpful, making it much easier to, let's say, have a technology and bring it out there within the ASEAN and move it across the region, which in fact could has the opportunity for regional growth, not just national, but for the Philippines, but for the entire ASEAN region. So,
Thank you very much. You touch upon the another important part that also the growth and the development is not just within the country. So the collaboration within the regional and also at the global level, that is also important, that can make things happen in a very efficient way. So these are the view of our panelists. So I think our time is very tight at this moment. So I think we have to move to our conclusion. So as I mentioned earlier, our last question, I would like to ask each of our panelists here, please provide me with a very short answer with regarding to the future. In the future, if we are looking ahead, what is the priority action that the institutions or the industries and or the government should take to accelerate the inclusive and sustainable digitalization? So this one, I'd like to go back to Dr. Francisco.
Okay, so in terms of outlook, I'd say I reference Dr. Gavalio's recommendation. We should be ready in terms of policy. Let's have them in place right now, where we still doesn't have, let's say, issues of worker displacement due to technology being adopted. Since more companies are already adopting, let's say, robotic or AI-based technology or digitalization. So let's have them in place right now, where there are fewer people that can still be affected by it, but they already have the social net for it to be prepared, to have the opportunity to be prepared, let's say education-wise. Let's have it here already in place. So we should formulate it, and hopefully we can start implementing it, not when the technology is already rushing into us. Yeah, so thank you.
Thank you very much. So is the implementation. Well, after planning, so the implementation is something is very important. So thank you very much. Mr. Adhwa, please.
If I may say, what is very urgently needed for the region, for the ASEAN region, and for the global world to grow in digitalization is affordable and inclusive access to not only the internet but to digitalization tools. So even in Malaysia, even in some provinces in Malaysia, we still lack the sufficient access for these digital tools. And of course, for other regions in ASEAN as well, we, as a region, we still have that particular problem. Of course, the access to smartphones, the access to internet connectivity has been increasing year on year, and at a very rapid speed, if I may add. But of course, it can be better so that not just a select portion of people in select provinces can avail to this technology, but it can be utilized and can be fully beneficial to everyone, especially in our region, because we are looking to be the fourth largest economy in the world very, very soon. And for this, I believe our region has to be equipped with affordable access and inclusive access to the internet and to digital tools, so that we will continue to strive and prosper in the future. Thank you.
Thank you very much. So you touch upon the access and also the inclusive, the opportunity of everybody, because it's not just we cannot just only focus on those who are living in the urban, but those who living at the far-flung area, we have to also think about how they would be able to utilize all these public service as well. So thank you very much. So Mr. Yassen, please.
Yeah, so I agree with policy as well as inclusive and equal access. But for me, priority should also be given at the center of what digitalization is, and it's actually looking into the people. It's when people talk with one another, collaboration happens, leadership happens. So that's collaboration is really critical so that the industry, the academic institutions, the government, and other stakeholders would know what are their roles, what activities needs to be done for us to move forward towards how do we want to go forward with digitalization. So it is anchoring on the speeches of the previous speakers this morning that people and collaboration is truly within at the center and one of the priority that digitalization should look into. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Actually, it's very important because Dr. Gonzalo mentioned earlier about the people and also mentioned about the labor force that we also have to take a look into and balancing between labor force and AI as well. So I'll give the floor to you that you may be able to answer the question and elaborate further, please.
I think what we need for the future to be even brighter is this virtuous cycle between creating opportunities and building capabilities for people. Creating opportunities, and 23rd of August in the Philippines, Conecta Don Pinoy became a law. What Conecta Don Pinoy will do is it will facilitate more investment in telecom. It will open up the sector of telecom a little bit further, bring more competition. That will help reduce the digital divide that today is an opportunity divide. So more competition that brings more investment into telecom, that brings more access of digital technologies across the country. That's going to bring more opportunities. But to take advantage of these opportunities, you need better skills. You need better skills in the stock of workers we have now, but also in the pipeline of workers that is coming. So you need more foundational and you need more upskilling and reskilling. So I think if you manage to get that combination right, that virtuous circle of more opportunities and more capabilities being built up, I think you have a brighter future.
Thank you very much. Actually, your answer is summarized all the conversation here already. That because everything is connected. Of course, at the nation level, the prosperity that is something is something that is the goal, the vision of the country. But how are we going to go about it? Of course, there is human because the digitalization will encourage the opportunity. We create more competition, but the problem is who would be able to work with that? So it means that we need more skilled labor. We need more skilled workforce to be able to run that business around and make sure that all the things that happening it's fit best for the nation, for the development of the nation. So these are the things that I believe that the audience here and also the audience online have learned a lot of things from our panelists. So thank you very much for such a wonderful insights and contributions to our panel. And also from our conversation today, we have learned that the digitalization is not just about adopting the new technologies. It's about the leadership, it's about policies, it's about collaboration that we mentioned, and the most importantly, we touch upon the people, the human, and preparing the workforce to ensure that the inclusivity and building resilience are crucial as innovation itself. So thank you very much, our panelists today.